everyone, it's Lauren, and let's take a look at the books that I managed to read during July. You guys should know that July was a bit of an abnormal reading month for me. I normally get through a decent number of books, but not as many as July. Now, keep in mind, Booktube-A-Thon did happen in July, which greatly helped my reading consumption, my book consumption, let's say. In July, I managed to read 16 books. That's right, 16. Granted, some of those are audiobooks, so that helped a lot because I was able to listen to the books and pack, because I also moved during July, so there was a lot of packing and unpacking going on. So the audiobooks definitely helped a lot with that. And also, like, the first several days I was at my new apartment, I didn't have any Wi-Fi, so I was basically just forced to read in the evenings. Not that I wouldn't have read anyways, but it was definitely, there wasn't the temptation of Netflix over there going, "Come watch the Great British Bake Off. You know you want to. You know that it's the right choice." There was none of that going on. Just me, an apartment full of boxes, and a couple of my books that I left out just to read, to spend a little bit of time just relaxing after a stressful day of packing and or unpacking, depending on which day it was. Enough of the circumstances surrounding everything. Let's talk about the books that I read. The first book that I read during July was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. Now, I got this book from the library because I was there picking up a copy of Howl's Moving Castle to watch with one of my old housemates. And as we were walking out the library, after I already checked out, I saw Norse Mythology just sitting there, so I went back and checked it out. I got it intending to read while on vacation, but that didn't happen, so I read it all in one evening shortly after I moved into my new place. And I really enjoyed Norse mythology. If you haven't figured out from everything that I read yet, I love mythology in general, as evidenced by my complete adoration for anything and everything by Rick Riordan. And Norse mythology did not disappoint me. I already knew some of the myths from Riordan's Magnus Chase series, so I knew the context of some of the myths, but I hadn't heard all of them, and I really enjoyed the flair that Gaiman used to tell the stories. It's a relatively short book. It's pretty thin. I was surprised at how thin it was because I thought it was going to be like a tome of myths, but it wasn't. I've heard some people say that it reads more like a children's book, which is kind of true because they are myths, but the myths are definitely not all child appropriate, let's just say. The gods got up to some weird stuff. So I really enjoyed this book though, and I gave Norse Mythology 5 stars. The next book I read was, surprise, surprise, Rick Riordan and Norse Mythology, because I listened to the Sword of Summer audiobook, so the first book in the Magnus Chase series. Norse Mythology got me really hooked back onto Norse mythology, so I went with the Norse Mythology audiobook. What do you know? And Sword of Summer, like all Rick Riordan books, I gave it 5 stars. Basically, if it's by Rick Riordan, I'm really hard-pressed to give it less than 5 stars. After the Sword of Summer, I next moved on to a different audiobook. I had started listening to The Blood of Olympus, the 5th book in Rick Riordan's Heroes of Olympus series, in June, and then it returned to the library from my Overdrive app, and I couldn't finish it, so I finished it in July. After listening to The Blood of Olympus, which, as you guessed, got 5 stars, I listened to The Hammer of Thor, the 2nd book in the Magnus Chase series, and like the rest of the Rick Riordan books, it got 5 stars. After finishing listening to The Hammer of Thor, I moved on to a not Rick Riordan book, which I know, it's unheard of. But I read Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. I read This Savage Song last year because it's actually right here on my bookshelf. That's actually the edge of the bookshelf. It's right here on my bookshelf. I got it in one of my uppercase boxes last year, and I loved the story. Like, oh my gosh, it was so good. And it's just a little secret. I haven't read any of Victoria Schwab's other books. I know, I really should, and I promise I will. I'll get to them. But I really enjoy this series. It's a duology, so it's just the 2 books. I'm probably going to end up owning a copy of this book eventually because it's only 2 and I have half of it, so...
I'm not able to get the answer to that question.
What the heck, Siri? No, thank you. I gave Our Dark Duet 5 stars. Highly recommend. Make sure you read this Savage song first. Just saying. After reading Our Dark Duet, I next moved on to another series of audiobooks, which I have one of the physical books here, so I'm going to hold it up now that you can tell what it is because it's just a red book. The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan, book 1 of the Kane Chronicles. Basically, Audible had a sale the other week, and I got all 3 of the Kane Chronicles audiobooks for like $12, which was amazing because I didn't own those audiobooks. I haven't been able to get those audiobooks from the library, so I've read the books a couple times, but I've never listened to the audiobooks for this series before. So I listened to the first book of the Kane Chronicles, and honestly, like, this series is the only one that doesn't get a full 5 stars on all the books for me. I've been giving the Kane Chronicles series 4 stars, or like between 4 and 4.5 for each book, because they're really good. They're just not quite as good as Percy Jackson or Heroes of Olympus or The Trials of Apollo or Magnus Chase. But they're really good still, so you should read them. And it's Egyptian mythology, and that's pretty darn cool.
There's nothing to read.
What the heck, Siri? Go away. After The Red Pyramid, I then moved on to the next book in the series, which is The Throne of Fire. I really enjoyed this book. It's the second time I've read this one this year, actually. Well, I read it the first time, and now I'm listening to it this time. So I give Throne of Fire 4 stars. Egyptian mythology again. Really cool. Really like what he does with the series. Love his twists and turns. I recommend it. And then after that, it was Booktube-A-Thon. And I started a couple books before. I started a book before Booktube-A-Thon. I was listening to The Last Olympian. Yes, Rick Riordan. I should probably diversify my reading a little bit more. Maybe a little less Rick Riordan, a little more other things. If you have any recommendations for really, really, really good audiobooks that I should check out, please let me know. Because I'm just realizing how much Rick Riordan I read, which is not a problem. By read, I mean listen to. Which is still not a problem. Just think of all the new books I could be reading. Just think of all those books out there. Leave them in the comments down below. We'll chat. I need book recommendations. Good audiobooks, please. So, Booktube-A-Thon started, which was super exciting. And I read 7-ish books. Ish is because of I started The Last Olympian before Booktube-A-Thon and then finished it during Booktube-A-Thon. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the books I read during Booktube-A-Thon. Go check out my Booktube-A-Thon wrap-up for that. You can find a link down below in the description. I'll make sure I put one there for y'all so you can go see all those books because I talk about them a lot more in that video than I would possibly have time to do here because I read 16 freaking books. Like, come on, that's insane. So, Booktube-A-Thon ended on July 30th, and I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to start another book. There's no way I'm going to be able to finish another book. There's no way. The night that Booktube-A-Thon ended, I started another book. But I'm like, there's no way I'm finishing this before the month of July is over. There's just, I read so much over the past 7 days. I'm just going to give myself no pressure. I'm gonna let myself read this however much time it takes to read it. I started reading Frostblood. I finished Frostblood on July 31st. 11 p.m. Definitely still within July. So Frostblood became book number 16 on my list of books read in July. I had started reading Frostblood once before. This is one of the books I got in my uppercase box, and I got about 50 pages in and was not feeling it. So I put it down, waited several months, and this time when I picked it up, I thought it was a lot more interesting. I was able to follow the plot better. The main character, she annoyed me less this time around, which was really helpful because the first time, I think that was part of the reason why I put it down, just because she drove me up the wall to no end. But this time, I really enjoyed it, so 4 stars to Frostblood. So that's all the books that I read in July. You've now heard about 9 or 10 of the 16. To hear about the others, go check out my Booktube-A-Thon wrap-up video. It'll be in the description, I promise. I'll put it there. And that's everything I read in July. I'm not sure what I'm reading for August quite yet. I might be doing another readathon, so I need to figure that out and choose books. I did go to the library today and pick up 6 more books because I obviously don't have enough to read as it is, because I've probably only read like 20%, maybe 40% of the books I own. Definitely, I don't have enough options for what to read. There's no way. But I will be back soon with another video. Join me down below in the comments. I'd love to hear about what y'all read in July. Also, if you have any good audiobook recommendations, please let me know. I love audiobooks and would love to hear recommendations from y'all. So, we'll be in the comments. I'll be there waiting for y'all. If you like this, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to y'all later.